Hello everybody, welcome to the Human course. I'm going to be sharing with you 6 sessions here, and the first one is to do with urban living. Okay, so we're going to be looking at that during this session, or urbanisation, the idea of the growth of towns and cities, and with that we're going to be focused on sort of poorer countries or low-income countries or newly emerging economies, and we're going to be looking at the push and pull factors related to urban areas, so why people are moving there in the first place, what that looks like across the world, and this idea of megacities, the challenges facing people that live there, and also any opportunities or solutions to some of the challenges that face people in these urban areas. A few keywords that students need to be aware of: obviously urbanisation, megacity, push factor, pull factor, rural to urban migration, and this idea of natural increase. At some points during this video, guys, I would definitely suggest that you pause it and get these sort of definitions down, any of the words that you are unaware of. So an urbanisation is the increase in the proportion of a country's population that lives in towns and cities. A megacity is basically a very large city with over 10 million people. So 10 million is the magic number there. A push factor is something bad or negative that makes somebody want to leave an area. And a pull factor is the opposite. It's something that might draw somebody in. Rural to urban migration. Rural means countryside, urban means towns and cities. So it literally means people moving from the countryside to towns and cities. And then natural increase is when the population naturally increases. Okay, so when the birth rate is higher than the death rate. So what does that look like across the world? So as you can see, we've got a map here, okay, which shows the sort of fastest growing cities in the world between 2020 and 2025. And we're really focusing on the sort of browns and oranges, or orangey yellowy sort of colours, where they've had more than like a 5% growth rate. So I'd be asking my students to sort of pull out the key trends here, so we can notice that a lot of growth is happening in Africa. So Africa is absolutely booming, okay, it's set to take over some of the other places in the world with the biggest populations like India and China. Nigeria, for example, in Western Africa down here, is the fastest growing population in the world, and it's now got the largest population in the whole of Africa as well. So it's a pretty significant place, which we'll come back to later on in this topic. But yeah, lots in Africa, and also parts of Southeast Asia, China still there as well, okay, and places like India. So they're the sort of major trends that are going on around the world in terms of where cities are still absolutely booming. And you'll notice in a lot of high income countries like America, the UK, pretty much all of Europe, that actually the growth's already happened. You know, it happened 50 to 100 years ago during the Industrial Revolution. Everyone moved to the cities, but now it's almost like the other way around. People kind of want to work from home. They want to move to the rural areas as well. Okay, but in lower income countries, in newly emerging economies, urbanisation is massive. And there's another map here, just apologies, it's not very clear, but these are just showing the kind of the megacities. So our dark reds are our world's megacities. Again, so many in Southeast Asia and some in South America as well, and the odd one in America. Okay, but again, mostly Southeast Asia. So why is it that the populations are booming in these sorts of places? Okay, well, we've got push and pull factors that students need to be aware of. We've got things that are pulling people into the cities in these low-income countries, such as higher paid jobs, improved healthcare, and a stable source of income. If they work as a farmer or a fisherman, that's not a stable source of income. You are very dependent on the climate, and if you get a drought or something like that, you're in a bit of trouble. Hence why drought is also a push factor. This causes thousands of people around the world to move from rural areas to cities, especially young people trying to improve their own lives and lives of their families. War and conflict, you know, just look at what's going on in Gaza and Israel at the moment, in Ukraine. This is going to force people to move as well. And lack of schools and universities. You don't tend to find very good education systems, especially in low-income countries, in rural areas. But if you go to the major cities, students are going to get on a lot better. And we've also got this idea of natural increase. If it is lots of youngsters that are moving in, they tend to go out and drink and do things and have lots of babies, okay? And so we have this population naturally increasing where lots of youngsters are moving in, they're having lots of babies, and death rates are starting to slow down as the country becomes more developed and the healthcare improves, okay? So you've got less people dying, more people being born, and therefore the population is naturally increasing as well. And students need to know both push and pull factors from rural to urban migration and this idea of natural increase. So if we've got loads and loads of people, millions of people moving to these cities for these opportunities, that's going to create some challenges. Okay, so some pictures here. Most of these I'm going to relate to Rio in Brazil because it's an example of a city in a newly emerging economy which is ever growing. Okay, the population has like tripled in the last sort of 60, 70 years. And just a few of these challenges here, I'll just go through with you. So first of all, education. You've got so many people going there, the education is not very good, and therefore only half of the students actually continue education past the age of 14. We've also got some environmental problems like sewage. If lots of people are moving there, their sewage needs to go somewhere, and 200 tonnes of raw sewage are dumped into Guanabara Bay every single day. That's like 200 cars worth of raw sewage. Again, if you've got lots of people moving there, lots of congestion, which is a good word for traffic, you're going to have issues with air pollution. You're going to have factories as well, and that's going to lead to 5,000 deaths a year. Okay, respiratory problems, lung cancer, that sort of thing. Because it's a very informal area where lots of people kind of moved into the slums and the favelas, 1/3 of them work informally, which means they're street vendors, they wash your cars, and therefore they don't pay tax. So they do not contribute to society. So this is a big economic problem. Crime rates are really high because of the lack of education. 50,000 murders last year alone. Okay, and then again, because they're in such informal settlements, only 12% have had access to clean running water. Students need to know a range of challenges, and they also need to know which of these are social, economic, and environmental. So it might help them to form 2 different paragraphs or 3 different paragraphs if it's a bigger question. So here's an example of a question from an AQA exam paper. Study figure 2, a photo of a shared toilet in an Indian city. Suggests why sanitation systems in cities in Licks and Nees create challenges. Use figure 2 and your own understanding. So it's a 4-mark question. So students really have kind of 2 choices here. They can either choose 1 point and explain it using lots of connectives like therefore, this leads to, as a result. But I would always say, to be safe, I would do 2 points and explain both of those really well using connectives. Okay, so again, it should only take 4 or 5 minutes and 2 points really well explained. And because it says use figure 2, we can't just make something up. We've got to be looking in this photo. Okay, so we're looking at sanitation systems, which are toilets and things like that. And we're saying, you know, why does the toilets in this picture create a challenge, okay, for the people that live there? And you can see there's litter here. You can see there's poor lighting. It's very close to the housing. So it's what you can infer from the image. That's what you're really trying to show as a skill here to the examiners. So here's some ideas from the actual mark scheme. The toilet's very basic. They not be very cleaned or emptied, which spreads disease. That would be worth 2 marks. Okay, it goes from 1 mark to 2. As soon as you say which spreads disease, like cholera, that's the 2nd mark there. Okay, and you've seen this from the picture. You've used your understanding to explain it for the 2nd mark. There are public toilets, which are shared by lots of people. This could make people feel uncomfortable. That would be a 2nd mark. The toilet block is very close to housing. This could create bad smells. Again, that would be 2 marks. They look dark, there are no lights, and so toilets can be dangerous to use alone or at night. Again, going from 1 mark to 2. There's litter and rubbish around the toilets, which may attract rats and flies. This could then lead to more diseases being spread around. That again would be a 2nd mark. And it might not have its own water supply, so the waste builds up and people cannot wash their hands. Again, this could lead to illness and poor hygiene. So you can see how it goes from 1 mark to 2. As soon as you add a connective like therefore, this leads to. And as long as you've got 2 of those, that'd be worth 4 marks. So what are they doing to fix it? These are just, again, related to Rio, some of the things that they're trying to implement to reduce some of the challenges facing people living in these big cities in Licks and Nees. Okay, so they have got the Schools of Tomorrow program in Rio, which offers free childcare for young mums so they can go back to school. It improves their education as well, so they can go on to get a formal job and contribute to society through tax. They've built a dam called the Simplicio Dam, which now gives 30% of Rio's energy supply, and it's renewable. Earlier we saw a picture with lots of electricity cables, and they literally illegally hook up their appliances to these big electricity pylons, which is extremely dangerous and can cause blackouts regularly as well. They've improved housing with running water, although a lot of the people there don't actually like this because there's a lack of a sense of community. They kind of put them in these sort of high-rise flats, and people don't tend to like that. They prefer the sort of community feel as before, but it does give them those basic essentials like running water and electricity. They've introduced a PPU, which is the Police Pacifying Unit. Pacifier is like a dummy in America, so think of it calms babies down. So the PPU is designed to calm the crime down. Okay, they've also got a free cable car. Crazy, we don't have this in this country, which takes the residents to the commercial centre where all the work is. Okay, so all the while you should be considering, which is the best strategy and why. And with that, I would be considering the AO themes, which we're going to explore a bit later on. Things like short-term versus long-term. Who would agree with you? What stakeholders would agree with you or disagree? What's the most significant opportunity? The best thing? So it's all about adding some weight or your opinion. If you were to get a 6 or a 9 marker or an 8 marker, if you would have Excel, you'd be needing to do some kind of those AO3 themes assessment and evaluation. Okay, next we'll be seeing how this applies to more high-income countries, and we're going to be looking at Bristol as an example of that.